This is the Brain Initiative. I don't know. I remember reading a few things in the like I saw it mentioned somewhere. Obama putting money into Brain Initiative for disease research. And you see the headline, and you don't really think much about it. But there's this long conference here of scientists. It's at White House. It's at the White House YouTube channel. So they're not trying to hide this. It's right there, and they're throwing out some language about diseases and stuff, but it's as clear as day that this is just a distraction. What they're really talking about here with this brain initiative, like they're talking about ways to build super soldiers here. Like this is like T1000 shit or RoboCop shit. Anyways, like this is one of the things that they're talking about is trying to find ways to eliminate fear from soldiers. And they say, to eliminate PTSD for veterans. That's what they're saying. But although they are talking about, the idea of eliminating PTSD for soldiers and then putting them back on the battlefield, but they're talking about ways to use like lasers to create fearless humans. Apparently, a big part of the focus behind this project is to find ways to create technology that can read your brain waves in real time, so that they can, so that they can read your mind in real time. And they're talking about how the technology doesn't exist. And when you first hear them start talking about it, these are scientists, you're naive about it. But then they start talking about it more, and they're talking about, well, if we understand this technology, then we could use lasers to reprogram your brain. And they're openly talking about this. Openly talking about using lasers to reprogram people's brains. The way I'm thinking about it, it would be like if you can imagine like burning a CD, right? That seems to be their concept. And that may be a little bit naive. Um, if you want my kind of pro tip on this, I give these guys a pro tip, right? Take that for what it's worth, but nonetheless, um, I don't. I actually did spend a little bit of time doing some cursory research into this. It was more just strategic. I had come to the conclusion at some point that due to the inevitability of death, existence is futile, and there's no rational thing to do with your life except chase immortality, right? Because nothing you do in your finite existence matters. The only thing that you could possibly accomplish in a finite amount of time is to eliminate the restriction of being stuck here for a finite amount of time. Anything else you do in your life is a waste of time, right? Existence is meaningless unless you can extend it indefinitely, and then all of a sudden existence has meaning, and you can start talking about doing things, and you know, um, in social concepts and in everything else, right? But in the meantime, because we all die, there's no point in caring. Just fuck it, go have fun, right? I don't think that you only live once should mean I only live once, so let's go jump off a cliff. No, you only live once, so let's make the most of it. And that might mean making very selfish decisions, and that's the truth of it, right? Um, but if you could extend it, then all of a sudden, science, for example, studying science would become more rational if there was no endpoint to your existence. Otherwise, you can come up with the greatest theories in physics, and then you die. And what if you love to do it? Great, right? And I'm sure that the Einsteins and the Newtons and these people, they enjoyed the science. They enjoyed making the science, right? Like they enjoyed their lives, right? But other people might rather go play guitar, and if that's what you'd rather do, you should go do it, right? These concepts of uh, service and obligation to the good don't make sense in the presence of a finite existence, right? Hence, religion, right? That's what Christianity did, is it stepped in and said, okay, you can live forever, just believe our magic fairy tale, and Sprinkle this fairy dust on your forehead and you'll live forever, right? Um, I'm not going to fall for that, obviously. So I had a point where, okay, let's chase immortality then. Let's try to get to this point. Um, I didn't think it was likely biologically. The kind of concept I came up with was, okay, what if we could um, essentially clone our consciousness into a different host, right? So if you could like download my brain onto a USB key and then upload it into an empty clone, right? If you could clone humans so that they're like brain dead, right, and like kept alive in tubes but with no mental function, with no consciousness, and then download a consciousness into them, and then you could keep a backup on a server so that if you get hit by a car or something, you might lose a little bit, or maybe you could do regular backups. I actually think that this is probably a decent projection of what the future is going to actually be like. That our consciousness will exist independent of our physical shape. Um, am I falling into a mind-body duality? I think that's a silly question, right? I'm not saying that the mind is separate from the body. I'm saying that you could. Okay, I am saying that you can separate the mind from the body, but saying that you can separate the mind from the body is not the same thing as saying that the mind is separate from the body, right? You could separate, a valve out of a heart, and you could take a valve out of a heart and put it into a different person. That's not the same. That doesn't mean that the valve is not a part of the heart, right? Or that the valve and the heart are separate. So I mean, I'm not falling into this, kind of Descartesian error. That's not what I'm doing. Um, but I am maybe nonetheless realizing that if you go too far the other way, then you're also making an error, right? And I don't think that's an error anybody's making. Like I don't think there are scientists out there that are confused about the mind body problem anymore, right? Um, or anybody thinking that just because your mind is an organ, just because your brain is an organ in your body, that doesn't mean that your thoughts cannot be transferred elsewhere, right? Um, it's almost like the terms of the language and the ideas and the concepts are too archaic to even try to apply, right? I think that we've kind of reached a point where a lot of those like you can't even really make sense of what they were trying to say anymore. It doesn't like it's hard to even. I had this problem when I was trying to read up on liberal uh, uh, writings around the period of the American Revolution. I couldn't make sense of some like these ideas of like being free from your vices. You're not free unless you're free of the influence of Satan, right? And so liberalism is about freeing yourself from the influence of Satan. It's like what? you know, it. But I mean, like people believed in Satan then, right? And the question of is our consciousness tied to our body or not? That was you know it meant something different now than it means today. What I'm trying to get to here is I don't think that they can really. The conclusion that I came to is that if you want to understand chemical processes that are happening at a quantum level, you're going to need a quantum computer to do it, to model it. I don't think that there's a way to use conventional computers to do it, to do what they're doing, right? And so the conclusion that I came to was that while it may be the case that all you can, the only thing you can ever do in this period of time is try to find a way to be immortal, the technology is not realistically attainable within my lifetime. So I might as well just go have fun, right? I had to take the bargain the other way. I wanted to, you know, throw away everything else and just focus purely on finding a way to become immortal. But I had to come to the conclusion that our technology is not, it's not feasible in my lifetime, anyways. And the frustrating thing is it might be close, right? I might get, if I can make it to 95, I might see it. Right? Realistically, if I make it to 50, I think I'll probably be doing pretty good. It would be longer than, I never thought I'd make it to 30, and I'm almost 40. Are we going to have this kind of technology by 2030, 2040? I don't think we are. And that's why I pulled out. So I don't think that what they're doing is like, they're talking about, finding a way to, like, how can you manipulate your brains using a laser if you're using a conventional computer and what you're trying to create is not, right? If the underlying chemistry is quantum, then you're going to have to understand, concepts of how a quantum computer works. In fact, maybe you might want to even do it the other way around, right? Maybe studying and understanding the brain will actually help us build a more realistic quantum computer. So we're dealing with all kinds of non-polynomial problems here. And, you know, it's never going to happen in a reasonable space in our lifetime, from what I can see. Meaning that as scary as this sounds, is probably not a serious threat anytime in the near future. But look into this. It's called the Brain Initiative. It's on the White House YouTube channel. And they're talking about building super soldiers, the kinds of things that were in the movie Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Like erasing memories, creating memories, just programming people's brains using lasers. Government-funded research here, guys. Thank God it's too crazy to take seriously right now. So does that mean that we're better off if the private sector does science? No. I think that we're better off if people have more influence on their government, right? This isn't a government versus private sector issue. The private sector will do the same thing. There's a difference between whether the tyranny is some business owner somewhere, or the tyranny is using the nexus of the state. If we had more public control over things, I think that public opinion would probably be pretty opposed to this, which is why they're using so much coded language, right? And trying to detract to the idea of research for diseases. Now this is scientists openly talking about building super soldiers on the White House YouTube channel.